Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers McKay.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your days to help make them focus on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, not tax day-worthy podcast. Today is Thursday, the 15th of April, 2021. Hey, Kristy, today is not tax day.
No, it's such a strange reality to be in for these last 2 years where April 15th has lost its fiscal significance,
exactly,
right?
Like that
have another month. We have another month,
and
and I usually end up postponing, doing an extension anyway. But I just think it's interesting that that's how it's going this year. And the reason that I'm also aware of it is that my son's birthday is in April. It's next week. It's actually next Monday. And he's turning 15th. So it's sort of like this April 15th is 15. Wow. Oh my God.
It's like this, the 15 is like a harbinger for you. But okay, so you have a 15-year-old son. How are you going to celebrate? What did he want for his birthday?
Well, of course, I've been asking him about and the answer is a PS5. That's all he wants.
An easy get for those who aren't.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible. Yeah. And this is his father promised him.
So let's just educate those who are listening who might not be super in on the lingo of teenage kids gaming systems. What is a PS5?
It's a PlayStation. It's a game console where you can't, there's games that you can either download from the internet or get on a disc. I don't know. And they have everything from Legos and a shark game to Assassin's Creed and FIFA.
It is also one of the most difficult products. So this thing launched, I think, in December.
Yeah,
right?
Over Christmas time.
Yeah.
And it was something, actually, his father actually promised him a PS5 for Christmas, but has not yet been able to deliver. So what he wants for his birthday is his Christmas present, which was promised to him back in December.
But have you guys been able to get it, or what's happening? I mean, he doesn't listen to the show, so what's happening?
He does not. So my son's father and I are not together. So we are co-raising this kid. So it's wonderful. And we have a good friendship. So I'm stepping away from that's not my responsibility. That's his dad's jam. And I think he'll probably end up buying it and spending ridiculous amounts of money. But that's fine. Whatever. So I'm buying him clothes because in addition to everything else, he's 15 and he is growing like a piece of seaweed. He's growing like kelp. Not grass. He's growing like kelp, 18 inches a day kind of thing. And
oh my goodness.
In this last year, he's just turned into a different, he's metamorphosizing.
I love that he wanted he wanted a PlayStation and you're getting him socks.
I'm getting him socks. I've actually started shopping. I already have the stuff. I'm going to put it all in a big duffel for him. And it's got socks and t-shirts and jeans and shorts and some new shoes and, so yeah, I'm very practical. I'm the practical parent, I guess.
Hey, you know what? Every family, every kid needs a practical parent and a fun parent. My husband is like the fun dad when it comes to our baby girl, and I'm the one who's, getting her situated and being practical every day. So we all play our relevant roles, and I'm sure he will be happy with his socks that he will wear while he plays his PlayStation that he gets. Hopefully. I honestly am really rooting for your son's father to get that PlayStation, because we tried to get one for our big kids for Christmas, and we just had to sit them down and just say, it isn't happening, guys. Like, there's just no way. We'll get on a list or something. But the console, which I think retails for around, a very expensive price of about $400 or $500.
And
then the second market is that, people are selling them for $3,000 or $4,000. It's ludicrous.
I don't think he'll spend that much on it. I don't really want to know. I don't, I can't imagine. The funny thing is that my son, who's really doesn't care at all about fashion, apparently he was saying that he really likes this brand called Farty.
Farty? Farty?
Faraday, but he was pronouncing it farty, and I think he just liked the idea of wearing something that was, Faherty. He just liked saying the word, I think. And I was looking at this, and it's pants that are ridiculously expensive and shirt, and I'm like, no way. And he doesn't even care, so I'm buying him. I'm going to Tilly's.
But you know what? Such fun that you're going to a store that you're picking out. It's just, it's a new chapter. And if you think about, his birthday a year ago, right? We're coming up on, I always get confused at how old my daughter is at this point, but she'll actually be 21 months at the end of April. I've been telling everyone she's 22 months old, probably because she's in like 3T clothing, and it's very confusing. But
yeah, I've been saying my son's 15 for a year now, so I get it. It doesn't change.
It doesn't change. Well, I'm very excited and happy soon to be birthday to your son. And you know what?
This is all personal stuff.
I know, exactly. It's not personal. It's professional, because that's who we are professionally is who we are personally. And I don't know how this became a self-help talk, but that's what you're listening to on today's Optimist Daily Update.
And I really, really hope that he doesn't actually ever listen to this podcast. I'm pretty sure he doesn't ever, but this could all come back to haunt me.
It could. But some of our big kids' friends actually listen to this podcast. I know some of our family members and your family members listen to this podcast, which we love. And then we also get that reality check when they're like, oh, hey, heard this on the podcast. Why don't you give me a call? So check in with your family, buy your son socks, and read the Optimist Daily. Speaking of reading the Optimist Daily.
What are you going to talk about today, Summers?
Okay. So we all know that I'm kind of in a pollen rut right now. And I think that the writers of the Optimist Daily are trying to make me feel better about the very human response I am having to the massive
your nose in it.
So they're just rubbing my nose in the pollen of the world. And basically putting it to the test. Do you really love pollinators, Summers McKay? Do you really? Well, guess what? Yes, I do. And so do people at airports. All right, that was an awkward transition, but I'll get to my headline. My headline reads, Beekeepers in Airport Join Forces to Save Pollinators. So in about 2012, Ben Schertzer, who was a wildlife administrator at the Pittsburgh International Airport, found himself dealing with a rather perplexing problem, swarming bees. Now, these bee swarms would land on winglets of aircrafts, interrupt refueling, bagging, loading, were often obscuring the lights on taxiways and delaying flights. After about 4 encounters, Schertzer did his own research and discovered that pollinator populations were in rapid decline. And we all know that's bad, right? Honeybees alone account for more than 15 billion in crops pollinated annually. He also found out, and we've talked about this before and interviewed many bee experts at the Optimist Daily, but that these swarming honeybees were also suffering from colony collapse. They decided to get organized and figure out what to do to help protect these bees and the airport environments that they were swarming in. So by 2013, Schertzer employed the help of a master beekeeper named Steve Rapaski in the hopes of addressing the bee issue just a smidge differently. And instead of trying to rid the airports of honeybees, instead give them appropriate places to be, thinking of an eco-friendly solution like putting hives. You may wonder kind of how the idea of introducing hives would prevent swarms, but it's pretty logical if you think about it. Swarm traps around the perimeter of the airfield allows the bees to have alternative landing spots and to stay away from the areas of the airport you would not want bees. All I can think of is the dancing, runway guy all of a sudden being swarmed by bees. That would just be so sad.
Sounds like Airplane 12 or whatever that comedy.
Exactly. Airplane 12. Guess it's a bad time to give up drinking. But not that I haven't watched that movie 10,000 times. I love this idea. As always, I think yesterday we talked about the sand martins and the building of a giant sandcastle to give them a home. And that really is my theme this week, is identifying ways of creating appropriate spaces, healthy spaces to allow for continued biodiversity and safety for all species as we live together.
Absolutely, because you can't really segregate nature with a capital N out there and then human buildings in here because
Exactly.
everything is interconnected. Birds fly thousands of miles from Africa to the UK, and bees are populating the areas around Pittsburgh airports because that's where the woods are. That's where
Exactly.
there's open fields there and there's
Yeah.
water there. So of course they're going to be, that's where they're going to be living. So give them
Yeah.
a good place to live. Housing first, Summers, housing first.
Housing first. Exactly. Speaking of, so we've all kind of heard me joke about the idea of putting a hive on our property here in Texas, which is ill-advised because of my bee allergy. But I did go by a lavender farm the other day when I had to take Brennan for a morning drive nap. And it was a lavender farm that also had a bunch of hives in the back. And it just was one of those, incredibly beautiful places on this earth where it's just fields of lavender and you can hear the buzzing of the bees and you just know that it is good for the earth to have these kinds of places and spaces that are curated for pollinators to live safely and gardens to grow. So I love finding places for
Yeah.
gardens to grow.
Well, speaking of places for gardens to grow, and maybe that was an artful pass over to me, or you just did it without thinking about it. But
No, you know what? I actually thought about it while doing it.
okay. Well, speaking of places for gardens to grow, my headline asked the question, how will farmers face rising sea levels? Floating gardens may be the answer, or at least one of the answers, because there's so many countries around the world, so many locations that are located within coastal areas that are being inundated increasingly from sea level rise. I was just listening to an NPR story the other day about the whole eastern seaboard, and as sea level has risen, there's more days in a year that areas, just whole cities or whole sections of cities, of towns, are flooded with the tides. So whether it's an inch or a foot, it can destroy the infrastructure there. And that's talking about a built environment. What do you do when you're trying to grow food? And you think about the islands in Micronesia that are becoming underwater, or think about Bangladesh, which is one of those countries. I think 25% of it, even now, is underwater for certain parts of the year. And so these farmers have been dealing with water in their yards, in their fields for decades. But there's some creative solutions for planting in places where there is more water than there is land. And Bangladesh is an example of an innovative way of addressing this. And they're going to have to get more innovative, and this is a stopgap, but we're going to have to bring this technology inland as the water creeps up. But the concept here, the technology, is to create floating platforms of greenery that are basically floating docks of land which rise with the water level, and they still give you a place where you can plant viable food crops. Climate scientists are estimating that 20% of the available land in Bangladesh will be permanently underwater by 2050.
That's a
Yeah.
really, really intense projection.
Yeah. There's other vulnerable countries that are going to be in that same dire situation due to climate change. And then there's other areas in the world, maybe not a whole country, but a whole region, which is going to be inundated with water. And so building these kinds of successful tactics into the way that food is grown in these areas and other will help to mitigate some of that reality. As I was saying, the floating platforms are constructed by cultivating plants such as water hyacinth several feet into the water, and then that provides the base, which can be used to plant vegetables without the need for soil. So it's a hydroponic kind of technology and ensures that these crops can sort of float with the water and still get the nutrients that they need. And so I just find this very interesting. And this is an old school traditional use of hydroponic technology.
Right.
It's not talking about wires and tubes, which also is going to be one of the solutions, right? But this is another one.
Yeah.
And it is completely environmentally friendly. This has been linked to the monsoon season in Bangladesh, but as these floating gardens are broken up, the nutrients are then mixed into the soil after the rains subside, and you just have drier land. And then you can actually plant the land-based crops afterwards, like tomatoes. It's an interesting solution that I think can be explored even deeper in areas around the world that are going to be facing the threat of rising sea levels.
Yeah, as they increase. And I think what I find also poignant or just important about this article is the idea that it is seasonal planting, right? So recognizing that at different stages, whether it is a monsoon season or a dry season, there are ways to use the soil differently or to use the planting environment differently. So we're not doing robust agricultural business that pillages the soil, making it not able to, then it has to go fallow for many years. This kind of diverse nature of planting different things at different times and using different tools to keep a biodiverse, it's agroforestry. Yeah.
Agroforestry, right. But this is
exactly.
Like
it's
aquatic.
Exactly. Aquatic agroforestry. I think it's really, really interesting. And you and I are definitely on the gardens and the birds and the pollinators theme this week.
Yeah, I seem to be getting all the seaweed stories.
Seaweed, I think spring has sprung. We're feeling some ocean desires. But if you are not with Kristy and Summers on oceans and pollinators, there are still lots of wonderful, wonderful stories you can read on the Optimist Daily. A headline today reads, California to return property to Black family after illegally seizing it 100 years ago. That is, I believe, out of Manhattan Beach, California. Meditation tips for the busy mind, and Nike's refurbished program to sell gently used goods at discounted prices. Looks like, what else? We've got, this one you'll love.
Daimler is now taking orders for their all-electric freight truck. That's about electrifying our delivery truck service and our electric freight service. That's great. Nepal's rhino population has grown by more than 100 over the last 5 years. And that may not sound like a lot in numbers, but as a percentage, that's a pretty significant percentage. So that's wonderful for rhino conservation. Small wind turbines could enable buildings in cities to live off the grid. And that's like bringing it down, localizing wind turbines, not just making massive wind turbines, but small ones. Starbucks is moving to make reusable cups the new normal.
So that one's interesting because when COVID kind of hit, I had just committed to only using my reusable Starbucks cup, and that became not possible during COVID. So I'm curious about this and that they're getting it back on track.
And let me just say one more thing about that, because now that I've now been at home and having my own coffee, and with my moving towards all vegan, I haven't given up coffee, but I've switched to drinking little an espresso size coffee cup with black coffee, which I love. And I love that feeling. And a friend of mine recently gave me a gift card to Starbucks as a thank you for doing a favor for her. And I realized that I don't know what I'm going to do with this Starbucks gift card, because I'm not drinking massive cups of coffee with creamer, whatever, lattes right now. I'm drinking espresso.
But they have espresso.
They do. Starbucks, but the idea of drinking an espresso out of a paper cup,
it sounds horrible.
It's nauseating.
I know what you can do with it. You can give it to your son.
What would he do with a Starbucks card? He does not. He's not. No.
Okay. See, my big kids are Starbucks aficionados. So
he's a weirdo. He doesn't like anything to any. Yeah. Unless maybe we had chocolate in it. Maybe he did.
Speaking of chocolate and nutrients, what's our last headline? Our last headline today, and teenagers.
And final headline for the day, there's a 14-year-old making a nutrient-filled biodegradable pot in order to help reduce plastic waste. And that's another one of those young geniuses we love to celebrate on the Optimist Daily. Thank you again for being here. Go to the website today and read these stories, because the ones that both Summers and I talked about, there's a lot more details in the articles online, and go and look at them and then look at our sources, because these are both really interesting and important ideas that can help save the world.
Exactly. So all of you innovators, young to old, teenager prodigies to old guys picking up trash in my neighborhood, thank you for what you do to make this world a better place. And thank you all for listening to the Optimist Daily Update. We promise to continue to share positive, solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world. And in short, it is changed for the good. We promise to cover the current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, and offer you the information needed most to chart new paths for all of us.
And if you're not already, please consider becoming an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com. And for just $5 a month, or a little bit more if you have extra cash that you need to find a good home for, you can help support reader-funded independent journalism and help us keep the Optimist Daily free for everybody who needs it, supported by those of us who can, and be a part of that solution-changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Have a great day, guys. Bye.